I got to make just a quick mention about our next guest. We really don't see a lot of our representatives and state senators in the studio, but I think if I were to sit back and think about this, I've seen more of Maxine Bell in the studio than any of the others. And first of all, welcome to the show. I've moved your chair from the last time I think you were here. Steve Millington remodeled the studio for us.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted. Any place you want to put my chair,
Yes.
I will sit in it and talk with you. Thank you so much.
Well, it's good to have you here, and this is an unusual year for you in the sense that, well, periodically people do have primary
Mm-hmm.
challenges. Throughout nearly 3 decades
Mm-hmm.
of doing this in the state capitol, you really haven't, to my knowledge, seen too many of them. We had a conversation, I know, on the telephone a couple of weeks ago, and you were pointing out that for 28 years, you've had very few complaints about your voting record, and it just seems that all of a sudden, that in your viewpoint, some people are just grasping at a few votes that you've made and saying it's time for you to go.
Well, and that could be, and perhaps I have stayed too long at the ball, and you wonder about that. But I lost my co-chair, Dean Cameron, and that was the right thing for him to do. And he moved on a year ago, and I've received a new co-chair, and she has a pretty heavy race. And I thought perhaps even though I'd been there a while, there should be some continuity on that budget committee because the changes, the budget is a living, it's a living document and it's moving all the time and you roll with one year and you better learn from the year before and the year before that, and then the pieces you put in place have to come to fruition 18 months out. And so I felt that perhaps should I be left with a brand new vice chair also, and she had a brand new vice chair, that perhaps there might need to be a voice from the past saying, wait a minute, we've been there, we've done that, it did not work, or it did work. And so those were my reasons again for running.
There has been that argument made that when it was you and Dean Cameron
Hmm.
it brought a lot of influence to Southern Idaho, and if you're both gone, and that leaves that door open, that influence may no longer be
Hmm.
there, and it could cost people here. That's the argument I've heard in
Hmm.
in your defense in all of this.
Well, we have some wonderful legislators from this area, and they all have unique positions, and they all have positions of power. Lance Clow does a terrific job in the policy area, but that policy goes first, and then you bring the budget behind it. And they all have their place, but no one from the Magic Valley does work on the Appropriations Committee. And it's unique. There's 20 of us, 10 from each body, the best staff in the state house. And it, like I said, we work all year round according to the Constitution. We go to work in June and we go to work again in October, and we have the right and the responsibility to go look at those agencies and look at those facilities that we put in place and check them out and see if that's what we thought your dollar was going to do.
We have a telephone caller with us. We'll ask the caller to keep it to a question and not a statement. And caller, you're on the air with Representative Maxine Bell. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air. All right. I guess our caller decided perhaps you answered the question. The representative had to put on the headset, which means, of course, now she's got to get her hair done again. Just want to remind the caller about that. If you're going to call, you got to be ready to ask the question when it comes along. The one vote that seems to be coming up a lot, and it may well
Hmm.
have been that the caller was going to mention this, is the vote on concealed carry. And we
Hmm.
talked about this off air, obviously,
We
for
did.
about 15 minutes a couple of weeks ago. And there were three of you in the Republican caucus, obviously, who
Hmm.
decided that you couldn't back it. Why was that?
It would have been so easy just to go with the NRA and to go with that group of people who are so concerned and so adamant that concealed carry should be a right, and it would have been an easy vote. But this is a republic. Now, I know there were more than the two I heard from that probably would have supported that, but I heard from two. I had an email from Jerome and an email from Kimberly. And the other emails I had said were concerned about the lack of training. Wish there could still be training. And I can't tell you, they came from Buell and Jerome and I believe Kimberly, and I must have had close to 2 dozen. Now that's not 46,000 people, but you have to assume that that's the way I should vote, is with the majority. That minority is heard, majority rules, and that is a republic. And if you can't expect me to listen and then do what I can for the majority, then I have no business being there. Now I will tell you, when I first ran, I did tell everybody that I was pro-life and that would be stable, but everything else could be on the table. And so I looked at that board and I thought, perhaps something will happen, that these people will have some concern. And I'm still hoping. That's law. It will be law. And the 1st of July, you have that right. And I'm hopeful that those who take that right will take the responsibility. I know my sister went through the training when she received a handgun, and she said it was the best 6 hours she had spent for a long time, the things she learned and the way she felt about it. And I thought everybody in a neighborhood with children playing in the backyard has has a right for someone coming into that neighborhood who's carrying to know the safety factors on that weapon. Uh, you wouldn't drive a car through a neighborhood without a driver's license. So, as far as I'm concerned, and then I went back to Justice Alito in 2008, and he said the Second Amendment, and this is not about the Second Amendment, it's not an absolute right. There are sensitive situations where there's no reason that you should not have restrictions on a gun. And he said, such as schools and government buildings and laws imposing those. So I felt I was in good company with Justice Alito and the 2 dozen people who did get a hold of me.
Now, you just mentioned something there about the number of people who actually got in touch with you. I was at the Lincoln Day breakfast with you a couple of weeks ago, and Jim Patrick made a comment about how few people among his constituency will actually reach out and
Right.
contact him about an issue. And yet, election day or primary day comes around, and people are often angry and they're
Hmm.
upset with all of you, and you haven't heard from them. And he finds that, and I think a lot of you do, to be very frustrating.
It is frustrating, and it's so easy now for them to get a hold of us. I keep a landline. It's a aggravating thing. I keep a landline just for people to call me. My name's in the phone book. Email. I have 2 email accounts. The state house email. Everybody knows that. And the interesting thing, I had probably 100 emails on wanting me to vote for a license plate that said maniac, and I don't even represent the maniacs in Orofino, and they were so excited and so adamant that they wanted a license plate. And so I guess you wish that everybody got excited and interested in what we were doing at all times, and then you'd hear from everybody. But I have to tell you, Bill, that perhaps I read something one time that said you can kind of figure if you get an email or if you get a phone call, he's got at least 100 other people that feel the way he
Right,
or she does.
right. I've heard that too as well, and
Hmm.
that factor is involved with that.
Yes, and since that time, I've had quite a few people thank me for the fact that, yeah, they were kind of wondering about why there would be no training with that concealed.
If you were out on the street today and maybe you pop into the diner or you're visiting with friends and somebody comes out and asks you, why do you want another couple of years?
Hmm.
Um, I know you probably already have stated this a number of times,
Hmm.
but maybe on the radio, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that I'm concerned about what I have put in place that needs some continuity. We have begun down the road to do a better job with our schools. We are looking at jobs coming into this state that will positively demand a certificate or a degree. And those children must be ready. And those professional teachers, those people who work in our schools, should be treated as professionals. It's a terrific job they have to do. Tremendous opportunity. Same with higher ed. During the downturn, we had cut higher ed budget 28%. All this does is put the debt on young people or keep them from going to get that certificate. We were losing teachers across the borders. We can't afford to lose good teachers. So we're on a path now with a the economy. Now it'll always go up and down. There will be another down. But the economy is on an upswing enough that we can afford to do better and be prepared for what we know is coming to the state. And so I feel an obligation. I'm 2 years into doing a better job and still balancing the budget and not raising taxes and covering what I think are the core responsibilities of government. And so I felt like that no matter what group I work with, I had an obligation and a responsibility to try and be there another 2 years and get us to the point where that stability is there, that vision is there, and we're moving on the right path for the future of Idaho.
Got about a minute to go. For people who would like to contact you, how do they go about doing that?
I have a landline 324-4296, mbell at house.idaho.gov. And that comes on my phone and it comes on my email, and I'm happy anytime to hear from you and just or a group if you have a small group. Now I'm going to go speak to the senior citizens in the morning. I've had the opportunity to be in the schools recently, and that's a privilege. And I'm available anytime now.
Well, we'll talk to you at some point again, I'm sure. And
Hmm.
we want to thank you for coming by today. I know you got a chance to visit with Penny, so that
Uh-huh.
was important. It's important for Penny that you come by and say hello. We've got a short break coming up. Bill Colley with you as well. Our guest has been Maxine Bell, state representative, joining us in studio today. She is involved in a primary which is 1 week from tomorrow. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.